Hey,
6:03.
6:03. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Tuesday, June 10th, select board meeting for the town of Georgetown. This meeting's being recorded for our YouTube page and, call to order at 6:03. Is there any public comment?
I see the fire department hopping on, so let's just re-ask that once they're in. I don't think so, though.
All right, they're in. We've seen if there's any public comment now that the Georgetown Fire Department is in. And I don't see anything from them, so I guess I can throw it over to you.
All right, and tonight there were no items to be added to the agenda that came forward to me. At 6:15, we'll be getting an update from the planning board regarding their recent short-term rental survey. In the meantime, we'll try to tackle a few items of business. Oh, and I'm seeing Katie Goodwin is hopping in and Jen. And thank you, Aria, for flagging that, because my eyes, I'm not quite my mother. She can see out the back of her head, but.
That's okay. I left my glasses and I'll take, unless somebody has something to say, I'll move to approve the minutes of May 27th.
Second,
All right, all in favor?
That is 3-0. Thank you. There were no items in your packet for review. In terms of assessing items, we have 4 abatements on the agenda tonight from 3 different property owners. And very briefly, each of these abatements, after my analysis, I can find some consistency with other properties. However, points raised in the Burgess abatement, I do feel require a site visit from Bill Van Tynen, and so I'd be recommending that go on to the assessor. Regarding the Pachowski abatement request for 2 Bayberry Lane, again, and I do see Kate Carpenter was hopping on
She's there.
in there and had filed this request. This is one where, again, I can find consistency in data, but the points raised in the abatement application, I again do think really warrant a site visit, which is part of the reason I'm recommending this go on to Bill Van Tynen. And regarding the Appalachian Mountain Club abatement request for their mainland property and for Beale Island. On the mainland property, there are structures that we have currently listed that they contest that they don't have, so I do believe a site visit is in order.
Right.
And regarding Beale Island, which is an open space, I found with most of the islands, there was a little bit of inconsistency on how this one was coded, so I think Bill will not need to go to Beale Island, but I would like him to review. So on all of those abatement applications, and if we could do it by at least party to forward on to the assessing agent, Bill Van Tynen, it would be appreciated unless there are any questions.
no,
I don't-
do you want a motion? Do you want a motion on all 3 together or separately?
If we could do it by owner, so Burgess, Pachowski, and then the AMC abatements, just so it's clearer in the record.
Okay,
I move that we ask Bill Tynan to review Petoskey, Burgess, and AMC
So
abatement requests.
Thank you, Brown.
I would second the motion to send to Bill Van Tynen the Pachowski abatement request. I'd second the motion to send to Bill Van Tynen the AMC request. And I'd second the motion to send to Bill Van Tynen the Burgess request.
Thank you very much.
cool. All in favor?
I am seeing that is unanimous, 3-0. In terms of other abatement updates, I did want to advise the board that I have heard from the county that the Seidman abatements likely are going to be appealed. An appeal has been filed, but there's a question on dates and deadlines, so they're working on that. I'll keep the board apprised if and when that moves forward. Additionally, there are a handful of other abatements that I will have on the agenda for the 27th that have come in. We're just taking them in as the order they've come in. I know one of those, for the Petersons, likely will be going on to Bill Van Tynen. The other 2 sets, I do believe I can handle without having to send on, but I just want to advise the board that we are nearing the finish line on these abatements, though they're still not quite over, so more to come. In terms of correspondence, if there were no questions, the state of Maine has sent along a letter from the Department of Transportation. The 2 bridges approaching Indian Point Road, if you're headed down 127 to the wharf, are being reviewed for future repairs and maintenance. When the DOT came to visit us at the office and just touch base, they did share that this is likely 3 to 5 years down the road. They're very early in the process again on looking at maintenance and repair on those 2 bridges. DOT also, I've had some correspondence with about the road plan and when 127 will be paved. And 127 is not gonna be this year, this summer. It has now been moved to next year. So John's rumor that he'd heard has since been confirmed.
You're just like Lee Bryce, John. Got a rumor going on. Tyler, you just mentioned something, June 27th, that's a Friday. Do you,
I meant June 24th.
okay, I just got a little bit freaked out. I looked at my phone, cause I didn't remember that as a date that I had in my calendar, so thank you.
Thank you for flagging that.
That's
I will
okay.
not be doing abatements on a Friday. if we
I
can help
just,
it.
I didn't think we were that we had switched our meeting to Friday night, but, in
It
the
could
event
happen.
that y'all did that while I was in DC, the crazier things have happened to me. Thank you.
And the Department of Marine Resources has sent along, they now have an interactive shellfish closure map that I'm gonna be getting up on the website versus the legalese that comes out quite often that is unique. Maine Municipal Association sent along their regular legislative bulletin. They also sent along a notice about training for planning board. And I just wanted to flag this specifically. We have a vacancy on the planning board that's come up.
Right.
We also have, with John leaving, the liaison from the select board to the planning board will be shifting. So I just encourage that as folks think about liaisons, if you're taking on planning board, we could get you in for one of those trainings for at least the base level in July or after if need be.
When is that again, please, Tyler?
It was July, I have it right here. Hidden, naturally.
Sorry to disrupt your flow.
Oh.
That is okay.
29th.
29th, thank you.
Sorry, it's the next thing. I didn't realize
Yes,
it's right
thank you.
there.
No,
Hey.
we're good.
Thank you, John.
Just gonna-
There's also a piece of legislation, if it gets passed, it's gonna make, add some mandatory training for planning board.
Thank you for flagging that, Mr. Tribona. We love trainings. Some of them required and some of them otherwise.
We don't
Um,
love legislation so much, but trainings are okay. Sorry.
And have we had applicants for the the vacancy on the planning board yet?
We have not publicized it, but one of the members was talking to somebody and they expressed an interest, but I wasn't gonna
Right,
say anything or do anything until
right,
the
we,
select board
right,
acknowledged and
Yeah.
if you have any opinions or anything.
Yeah.
I think we can wait until until we have a new configuration of the board. We'll have to look at all of the committees
yeah.
at that point and the
Yeah.
liaisons.
And we will be having as town meeting gavel drops, we do a lot of our annual reappointments as well as the terms that
Right.
expire and come up. So in due course, we will be picking up on that.
Right.
And in your packet, I also included the Risk Management Express Bulletin, a nice one pager of things that we can do to lessen some of our risk. The Southern Mid-Coast Resilience Coordinator Collaborative Mouth Twister sent along the June newsletter. I periodically include with the board different newsletters of the associations and groups we get, so just for what that's worth. Wednesdays, Gleaning is back here at the town office. And Bath Heritage Days had sent along a parade notice and request for sponsorships. In regards to continuing items, we've received an approval on the 4 Ocean Avenue Main Waste Discharge License. And I turn this over, if there were no questions, to board members for their updates. We got 4 minutes ahead of the planning board.
My update would consist of the planning board meeting I sat in on, and I think that's gonna get thoroughly covered in about 3 minutes. So I would wait for that.
Thank you, John. Brahman or Arya?
The Conservation Commission has a question about minutes. They couldn't find theirs on the website. And I said I would inquire, but they're probably there. I think they may not know where to look.
Let me look and see. I know that I upload minutes sometimes in batches, and it could have been a little bit since the last batch got uploaded, so. I will make sure if they're not on there where they should be, that they will get up there ASAP.
Okay, I think they were looking for past minutes actually, and just couldn't find any.
Well, there
So,
are some, so I know that I
Yeah.
can help them look for where on the website. But
Yep.
I'll also make sure that the latest edition from Nancy Kinner and others ends up on there as well.
yeah, okay. And the other thing is that although Nancy Kinner forwarded to you a forest use application policy and discussion, we've pulled that back. It's being revised. So forget it for now. It will come to you.
Very good.
Solid waste meets tomorrow.
All right,
No, Thursday.
Thursday.
Yes, Thursday. I'm sorry.
Does feel like a Wednesday,
Yes, it
I gotta
does.
say, yeah.
But you don't meet on Wednesdays.
No, we don't, so it would all be off. All right, if it's my turn, I'll just be very quick. The rec committee has its annual June Jam in partnership with the school right here on the back of the grounds. Anyone is available, is welcome to join in the dunk tank. For some of you who might have fun in that. So we're trying to get folks in the dunk tank, and so that'll be this Thursday, which is also the graduation day for the 6th grade. The Working Waterfront has been lightning fast in its efficient and excellent work. It's ready to send for preliminary review to the select board, the mission statement and a policy / ordinance proposal for us to review as an entity. And the Board of Appeals has not recently had a need to meet, and I believe the same holds true for the Harbor Committee, and I'm out.
Thank you, Aria. And I do know with the Working Waterfront Work Group, we're working to schedule an appointment to get them to come meet with the board as well.
That's right.
Perfect. So if there were any questions for Aria, John, or Bronwyn, if not, you're right, we are out. We're right on the dot, 6:15.
Do you have more business to take care of?
We can tackle that. Do you mind waiting a
I
couple?
don't mind waiting a little bit. You don't,
I bet we could get this done in
Yeah, I
15
mean,
minutes or less.
you might as well.
Well, thank you, Bob, for your deference. A brief town administrator update. Tomorrow, John and I will be on the Robin Hood Road with FEMA for the closeout of the Robin Hood Road Culvert project.
Right.
Project's been done for 9 months now, and I'm glad we're finally getting folks here to see that the project is done and close that out. The Army Corps of Engineers had been a sizable portion of the funding on that project, as well as FEMA monies. And we've been working on trying to recoup that Army Corps monies that through Pine Tree Legal has consistently said it's coming. It turns out the delay was due to a retirement, but Pine Tree Legal is very confident that they will be able, now that they know who is holding that role in the Army Corps of Engineers, to get the monies to the town of Georgetown. So there was a little bit of a snag, and Mary and I for about a month have been trying to get to the bottom of when are we gonna be getting a check, and Pine Tree is confident that it will be soon. So, Main Revenue Services, last week, the Property Tax Division had come to the town office for an audit of our commitment work last year and open space applications, et cetera. We're waiting on their write-up, but we passed, so that put my mind at ease greatly. The Bureau of Motor Vehicles, we're working on getting Angie trained, and there is a little bit of resistance on the training for the last week of June. We had been hoping to get Angie in, so the first week of July, we could keep the wheels turning. Right now, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles is being a little bit of a stickler that Angie is not yet a town employee, so they won't do the training. I've called back today to say, well, she was just elected at 8 PM tonight. Can we get this on? They're working through their supervisors to hopefully find resolution. If we can't do that last week of June, there is training the second week of July, but we want to minimize the impacts on residents if we can.
Right.
Just as a reminder, town meeting Saturday at 9 AM, immediately following the presentation of the Boston Post cane. The chair of our board will also be acknowledging the recipients of the Spirit of America Award, as well as the Citizens of the Year. Eros Oysters had invited along folks to go to the tour on Friday at 4 PM. We have 4 members of the planning board attending, one town office staff and their spouse are attending. Is anybody?
Yeah, I had it on my calendar and I meant to ask you today when we spoke, was it today we spoke, but in any event, I plan to attend now.
Perfect. And do you think you'll be there, Joe?
Probably not.
Okay, and Bronwyn, do you think you'll be going on that tour?
No, I have a follow-up on my knee replacement that afternoon in Portland.
I hope it goes well on the follow-up, and will Jen be coming with you just for a head count, or do you think it'll be just one?
I'll have to
TBD?
get back to you about that,
Okay.
just because of the child care situation.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I will be circling back with them later in the day tomorrow, so just let me know, and I think that they're always good with one extra, so.
Okay, yes.
And lastly, next Monday at 4 PM, we will be closing the office a little early at 4 o'clock to take Alex out to dinner as a going away. Alex still has about 2 weeks after that she'll be with us, but with other office staff's appointments and other things, we want to make sure everybody can get together for a good send-off. And we went the route of dinner versus lunch so we can minimize the impact on residents. So for what that's worth, Alex's last day will be 6/26, which is a Thursday. And on 6/30, the office will be closed while we let the new town clerk come in and get acclimated and set up. So July 1, provided all the training happens, we can hit the ground running. So for what that's worth. Any questions for me? If not, we had no old business. And so the next item up would be the approval of a letter from the select board for our multi-year town report.
Yeah.
And I know Bronwyn had sent along a couple of minor tweaks that I have incorporated. And I spoke with Aria about it, and John and I spoke last week, so.
Move to approve the proposed town letter, the proposed select board letter for the town report.
All right.
Second,
All in favor?
Thank you. That is 3-0, and John will be signing that tonight. Just briefly on town report, this is now the last step that we need before we can get about 300 pages of financial data broken up by years off to Bath Printing. So they are gonna be working on layout for us as part of their service. So I've got the data, we've got the letters, we've got the pictures, the cover has been picked, the back cover's been picked. So town report should be imminent, though my goal of having it printed in here before town meeting, we've just narrowly missed, but.
Okay. Did y'all, am I mistaken, or were you doing a contest with the kids?
We did a contest with all island residents and kids as well to participate on the cover. We put out a bulletin to the school to have a special section for students. We only received the one, and that student is gonna be our back cover
Okay,
with
great.
a wonderful looking towards the future of the working waterfront, so
Okay, great,
very exciting.
great.
And so the last thing that I had on the agenda before we go back to Bob is a request for the use of the First Church. There is a family in town, I've spoken with each of the board members that had a family member who was an original parishioner who's nearing end of life and was hoping to be able to hold a funeral in the First Church. However, the position of town office, and I would defer to the board, really is that with the mold issues and some of the other safety pieces, it really is not in our best interest to be opening up the First Church to one event, because it then could be, well, you did it for one, why not us? So for what that's worth,
Tyler, I just think, sorry, I think we have refused previous requests to use the church. And we just have to be consistent, but also mindful of the fact that at this point, due to the mold, some issues perhaps with the foundation and liability, if nothing else, safety, health, liability, preclude use of it. And I'm very, very sorry. And I feel very remiss that in my term on the board, we have not managed to get anywhere with either use or decommissioning of that structure. But I think that's just where we are right now.
thank you, Bronwyn.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, the not being able to really use it right now, so that makes sense.
So do you want a motion or are we just,
I believe do we need a motion or just
A motion would be helpful, that way
Okay.
we can just return to it when this request inevitably comes back from someone else.
Mhm.
But I know Aria was about to offer some thoughts.
I
briefly.
just would be concerned about, opening up a building that we know is unsafe. I mean, we're publicly saying it's unsafe. We've said that across countless venues, and, I don't think that's fair to the community, nor is it a good, fiscal and fiduciary decision by us as an entity.
Thank you.
So I move that we reluctantly deny the request to use the church.
I reluctantly second.
All in favor, reluctantly.
And there are 3 reluctant votes in favor. Thank you, everyone. And so we have a couple items to be signed before we're done, but I'm gonna turn this back over to Bob, who is the last thing on our dance card tonight.
All right. Okay, I submitted 2 pieces of paper. One was a data survey summary and, things to discussion points for the select board. Looking at the data survey summary, there's not a whole lot to say there, except for I do owe you an apology because the very last item on that where respondents indicating short-term rentals should be owner managed, and it goes down and has several other statements. The number of respondents indicating that the town should regulate short-term rentals is listed twice. Halfway down, it says 136 respondents indicated town should regulate short-term rentals. The very last line says 198 respondents indicated short-term rentals should be licensed and or registered. And somehow, I'm not sure exactly why both of those are in there. It should be 136 respondents indicated town should regulate short-term rentals. Having said that, one other item concerning the data summary, several people had asked if they could get the results of what the survey was. And if there were no objections, a corrected copy of this would be posted on the town website, and if it was okay, have a stack of them available at the town meeting, so if people wanted to pick up a results of the survey at the town meeting, they would have that available.
I think that makes sense. I mean, it's we've been moving towards this initiative of being more transparent, being more available, accessible, the information being accessible to people. So I think that makes sense.
I think it's interesting data, and I want to commend the planning board for tackling a difficult issue and for getting so many responses. Was the 1,000 that you sent out, that was to all the households, all the taxpayers in Georgetown? Or was that, I'm sorry, was that, yeah, okay.
Yes, it was. We tried to our best to eliminate if somebody had 2 separate property tax bills, to only send them one. I'm not sure that we were successful 100% on that.
And were the responses anonymous or identified?
For the most part, they were anonymous. There were a few people that included their names and phone numbers, saying, if you want to talk to me more, or if you want more opinions, let me know, that type of thing. We have not disclosed anybody's name in any summaries that we have.
I have a question. What is the distinguishing data point that y'all were looking for when you have the 136 respondents indicate that the town should regulate the STRs, and then the last one is 198 indicate that the town should license or register them? So it's just a matter of registration versus what would be the regulation that y'all were thinking about, Bob?
Well, we haven't made that decision.
Got it.
Because the second thing with the discussion points, if you will,
Okay.
was, okay, here's the data that we've got. Here are some items that, if we continue with this, that we think are important. So actually what we're doing, or what I was planning on doing tonight, was to throw back at you and say, okay, this is what we've got. Where would you like us to go from here? I think there are some very pertinent things here. A lot of people say, you know, that, it's none of your business. And there, you know, we've had short-term rentals forever in Georgetown. I mean, one person indicated they have been renting out for 55 years.
That's all right.
So, yeah, it's been there for a long time, but you know, things change. When I was a kid growing up, I didn't have to wear a helmet when I was riding my bicycle. Now it's law in some places, you know, nothing stays the same. When we look at it, you know, there are several things that to me are a concern. You know, should we know how many short-term rentals we got? I think it's in the town's own best interest to know that. Safety. At a minimum, you know, should you make sure that a short-term rental has a fire extinguisher? That they know what the address is. It should be in big bold letters someplace, because if you have an emergency, somebody fell and cracked their head open and they're bleeding badly, and they call 911 and they say, okay, where are you? And they go,
Right,
it's short-term rental. They're panicking. They're not gonna know. You know, smoke detectors. If somebody has taken a accessory building on the property and converted it into a short-term rental, in their stairs, do they have handrails? You know, common sense things. But if you're doing things on a budget, you know, and is there a liability hazard for the town?
once we know about it,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, those kinds of things. Should
Bob,
we,
when you, I know that one of the issues is defining a short-term rental, but what definition did you give when you sent out the survey?
when we sent out the survey, a second. When we sent out the survey, we had a cover letter on it and said that, short-term rentals for the purposes of this process, meaning the survey, are being defined as a dwelling unit that is rented for a weekend, a week, a month, or any period less than 90 days. This differs from a seasonal cottage used by family, friends, and family. Key difference being that a short-term rental serves the purpose of generating income for the property owner. It is typically occupied by non-family members. And I think, you know, that if we are going to go forward and write some rules and regulations and have an ordinance, if you will, then that needs to be fine-tuned to make it a little bit clearer as to exactly what a short-term rental is.
Yes, and I think that other towns have defined it in different ways, right?
Yes, there are several different ways.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've been looking at some of those, and we have yet to come to common agreement on if we go forward, what we would do. I mean, some of those questions we've just put off because we want to find out exactly what it is that the select board would like us to do.
And I think that y'all looked at what Arousik had done, or did you not? I'm trying to remember what you said.
We looked at it, there are several others that we've looked at,
Yeah.
and, you know,
Okay.
and there are differences between them and
Right, of course, okay,
all of that.
all right,
You know, should there be common sense, to me, common sense, requirements placed on the owners
Mhm.
for their guests. You know, such as no excessive noise after 10 p.m., no blocking of roadways, park only on property belonging to the short-term rental.
All the safety things you mentioned.
Dogs on a leash, no fireworks or firearms, you know, those
Yeah.
kinds of things. And, and like you say, all the safety things.
And I guess this is probably a question ahead of itself, but we don't regulate firearms or fireworks for residents in the town.
Correct.
Can we
And-
regulate that in a short-term rental?
Well, that was a brief discussion that we did had when we started talking about that. An awful lot of people said something about a noise regulation.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the biggest issue I've heard. is noise.
And so, and expanding it to fireworks and all of that stuff. I'll just talk about noise right now. If you put a regulation in for a short-term rental saying, you know, after 10 p.m. or whatever time you decide upon, there's a limit on, you know, you can't have a live band there outside playing and, you know, things like that. But then the next door neighbor that doesn't have a short-term rental, they have a wedding reception. So, yeah, you know, intentionally or unintentionally, this will have an effect on other areas in town and other things that we do in town.
I think that Woody cited a state regulation that bans fireworks after 10 o'clock.
I haven't seen that. I haven't heard of that, but it would make sense to me.
Yeah, me too. I don't know who sets them off. I'm pretty sure it's
Well, if there's a state,
longer term residents who do squealies at the wharf at night and set off firecrackers randomly um, to upset the dogs and scare the neighbors. But
yeah,
it would be nice if you could count on it stopping at some certain time.
I mean, you know, if we are gonna dip into the regulation business, there's gonna be an awful lot of, more in-depth investigation. It's just like dogs on leashes. There is a state regulation
Yeah,
about dogs being on leashes.
yeah.
And virtually nobody knows about it.
Well, I think they may know, but
Yeah.
And I
Well-
do know that Lisa's popped her hand up a couple times to chime in, so I just wanted to make sure that we weren't too far ahead.
You're talking. I mean, yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Thanks. I just wanted to say a couple of things that have come to mind for me as part of this process. I absolutely want everyone to be in town to be as safe as possible. My concern about saying you're going to be safe and have these things in a short-term rental is we don't have them in the population at large. So you have to have a smoke alarm, but you don't. So that's consistency is a concern for me, and I just am throwing these things out for you as the select board to consider when you're deciding, do we go forward and how do we do this? Another thing that I want you to take note of is that there were many people in the survey that said either they had no opinion or they felt okay about short-term rentals. I mean, there were a large number of people that said that. There were 166 people that said they have seasonal properties that are used by themselves and their family and friends, which obviously creates many more people here in this town during the summer season. Also, as Bob mentioned, you know, if we require that you're going to be safe in your short-term rental and you're going to have tenants that are safe, what happens if someone gets injured or dies in a short-term rental? What happens for the town's liability if we have neglected to make sure that those things are in place? I just want to be sure that we're covered if that happens. And the biggest question for me is how do we enforce all this stuff? We don't have the personnel in the town office. Do we hire another person? It can't be the responsibility of our current codes person. He's already inundated with work. So do we put more rules into place that can't be enforced or that enforced some of the time. I understand the logic of having them there because then you have something to fall back on, but does that create more trouble than it's worth? Are we trying to address a problem that is maybe not as big a problem as we thought? I'm just throwing that out for consideration as we decide how to go, or you decide how
Yeah.
you want us to go forward, if you want us to do that.
I mean, I think we'll have to definitely digest this data and then think about what makes practical sense and what's fair and equitable, as a town of year-round town of what, about 1,200 now? And then obviously seasonally. It's really interesting, and that's why I'm glad people asked for, access to it. I think it's important that they know some of these numbers.
And so many people filled it out. I
Yeah,
think if nothing else, to say thank you for
Right.
taking the time to do
I
this.
mean, we
Here
got-
is what you
nearly
said.
half our
yeah,
population.
we
Yeah.
had nearly
Super.
50% of the surveys that were sent out came back,
Yeah,
which is quite
Amazing.
it really is.
We don't get that kind of response rate on other things.
Yeah.
Right, so, it's clearly an issue people care about. And so, from my perspective, and I'm sure Bronwyn feels the same way, since we're losing you, so I won't speak for you, is that we have to be very, methodical about it and not just jump into starting to, draft up an ordinance or some kind of regulatory, scheme for this. Because there are implications that I'd like to really think through.
I mean, there's an awful lot of legal implications.
Yeah.
That will require the town lawyer to get involved in it
Yeah,
and look at it. And, you know, thank you very much for getting me back on track. I mean, that, you know, how do we enforce all of this?
yeah, right,
I don't want, and this is just me speaking, I don't wanna have a piece of paper that has rules and regulations and requirements in there, and the town doesn't have any way of enforcing it.
well, one thing that comes to mind for me from liability is a homeowner that's gonna have an STR, or an owner that's gonna have an STR. Presumably has insured it. And so obviously they've had to make some kind of certification to their, to the on the risk management side that they're responsible for, so.
It depends on some insurance companies allow you to rent for as long as 4 weeks without any special coverage.
Right, for the home that you're living in,
Right.
right, yeah, right, I was thinking of separate
Yeah.
dwelling, which seems to me a little bit more riskier for, to his point, I think about, Chief Wayland talking about all the ambulance calls we have. So to your point, if somebody does get injured, you know, a non-home owner
Right.
property that is still in town.
I mean, you know, if we're talking ambulance calls, I mean, there's some degree of comfort when we go out on an ambulance call, because there's a
Right.
pretty good chance that somebody that's in that ambulance, you know, responding,
Right,
has some knowledge of the family history.
Right.
So you know what you're getting into.
right,
But when you have a bunch of, people that are in town for weekend, you don't have any of that, and, you know,
And it's absolutely true that the advertisement for many properties online often does not include the address. It's,
Yeah.
it's the, the cottage by the water or the beautiful lake or something. And many times when a renter comes to deliver trash to the transfer station and they ask the address, the people don't know it. So I think that is a really important thing to flag about the address of the property. And the basic safety issues of having the fire department, well, 911 is universal, but certain things that are true in Maine that may not be elsewhere. One thing that occurs to me is that if we're talking about the address of the property, leashing of dogs, if there is a rule about fireworks, that we might as a town create a document that could be posted in a rental that would include that information and have a big space where they would write the address,
Yeah.
which would be in the interest of the landlord to put up, and therefore it not such an, not punitive, but helping people. Um, anyhow, I think Ari is right. We need to digest the information and get some reaction from people who in town who see the results. Then maybe some of those people who didn't fill it out would now want to comment, or people who somehow missed the survey.
I mean, why wouldn't we have a public hearing about this?
Well, you-
Yeah, I mean,
At some point, you're gonna have to.
Yeah,
We're gonna-
well,
Yeah,
that's,
right.
that's a little bit,
But
Well,
maybe
that's
before we,
this is just the data at this
Right,
point,
I know.
and just a matter of,
If you're gonna create an ordinance. you
Yeah.
of
gotta
course,
have it.
I do know that, but I'm just saying, just to her
Yeah,
point,
you know,
yeah,
leading up to it.
yeah, leading up to it,
And another key point is, of course, wells and septics.
right,
And then that breaks into, the way they determine septic system size is the number of bedrooms.
right,
So then you're now getting into, okay, how many bedrooms?
right,
And in today's society, sometimes you have what they call a bonus room if you have an attached garage.
mhm,
And they got this big room that can be a dance floor, it can be a bunk room, it can have 5 or 6 or more bunk beds in it. So you can wind up with, let's say you have a septic system for 3 bedrooms. Then you got that bonus room, and now all of a sudden you got 16 or 18 people. And if that's happening every week, that septic system won't be able to handle that.
Yeah.
Do you agree, John?
oh, business is good.
And I will just add to that point about the septic, back in my college days, I remember we'd find a spot online and, hey, if we find 10 people in these 4 bedrooms, we can have it really cheap for the weekend up at Rangeley. And, we're gonna go have a great time, and we might go kayaking at 2 a.m. And now, wearing the hat I have now, I realize, hey, that wasn't as great to a septic system and probably not to those neighbors. So it just underscores that point.
sounds like a confession.
Definitely. And I do think that, just from my perspective, wherever we end up, I wanna make sure that we at least are mindful that some folks are renting out this home so they can hold on to it and keep it in the family.
Yes, that's,
And on my second week here at the town office, I also remember the call from Freeport. Never got a name. Do you have a short-term rental ordinance? And I said, no, but the town's well, we'll be grandfathered, and hung up. And just that mindset of, there has to be somewhere on the spectrum a sweet spot.
I mean, now that you brought that up, when you look at the registration of the town, if you're gonna have to require something like that. Regardless of whether you've been doing it for 50 years or not, it should be registered. Now, the people that have been doing it for 50 years, and, one of the proposals that I mentioned as we were discussing this in the planning board is, everybody gets registered. Whether they've been doing it for 50 years or they're doing it for 6 months, everybody's gotta get registered. The first year, there's, you have a year to do it.
Right.
And then go from there. Should there be a fee? If you're gonna have to hire another town employee, there probably should be a fee associated with it, so it offsets some of the,
Mhm.
the money the town has to lay out. And, if somebody doesn't register their short-term rental, and it somehow becomes known, what's your recourse? What do? Is there a penalty?
mhm,
I mean, we've got penalties if you don't get a building permit,
if you don't register your dog,
Yeah. you know, it's a common thing. So, you know, say no fee for the first year. But after that, there'll be a fee or maybe a fee. But, you
Unless
know,
it's a new, unless it's a new property or newly for rent. A lot of information about rentals is available online. And I'm wondering if, I don't know how many people in Georgetown use RBO or VRBO or one of those places, Airbnb. I know the state requires, if you have to collect sales tax if you
9%.
rent, right?
9% residency tax.
9%.
And yeah, but if you rent for more than a certain number of days a year, isn't that right, Lisa?
They
Or
charge, so if you rent with a platform like VRBO or Airbnb, they hold 9% of the rental fee, which they then give to the state. Because that's the fee as a rental property, regardless of whether you rent for 3 days or whether you rent for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however the time period. There's a
okay,
resident.
when I was renting as an individual, I had a license from the state to collect sales tax that I had to post, so people knew I wasn't keeping that fee. But I was required to submit reports and pay because I rented more than 14 days a year or something like that.
And you're still expected to register with the state and do that and declare how much your income was. And then it tells you at the end what your percentage owed it, what the dollars owed is based on the 9% occupancy fee. But if you rent with, even if you rent with one of those platforms, you're supposed to fill that out. But you don't owe any money because it's already going to be paid through
Okay.
Airbnb.
So what I'm wondering is if that information would be available from the state to a town to know.
It's not, we last year had tried to get Representative Hepler to go through when we initially had some short-term discussion, not to interrupt rudely, Bronwyn.
Yeah,
But I do know that the way the state handles it, it would take over a year to deal with gathering the data because the state takes all the stuff from Airbnb and Vrbo and others and doesn't break it down by this is the amount that came from Georgetown.
mm,
And I know that the legislature had been asked if that was information they'd find useful. And that was not at the priority list of data they were diving into that time, which is why I think it was like a year or 2 years of backlog. And I just thought that was a little egregious having worked up there, but I know that data is not as accessible as one would think.
And honestly, I don't know how they keep track of it, because at the end of the year, Airbnb gives each state the amount that they owe, but it doesn't designate. Well, unless the state really wanted to do a complete audit, they wouldn't know where that money is coming from. So the audit would be to match what I say I've had for renters and what Airbnb gives to the state for the rental fee or for the occupancy fee. I don't know how that works. It just sounds so
It's
inefficient,
it's just like the school.
crazy.
We don't get reimbursed on special ed for 2 years. You know, basically, when you get money from the state for education, it's based on 2-year-old data. So I wouldn't expect it
Yeah,
to be
it's a-
doing any better than this.
it's a nightmare.
But at any rate, getting back to,
Register.
these are the things that we've been discussing. This is the data that we've got, and I will fix the problem on the last page. We would like feedback from the select board as to what you want us to do. Having said that, you know, no matter what we do, at the soonest, anything that will affect the town would be after this town meeting, next town meeting.
Right,
If
Right.
if we were able to get any,
right.
all the stuff in one sock. So, again, you know, the planning board would like to know what the select board would like us to do going forward. And we don't expect an answer tonight. We don't expect an answer next week. As you say, you're gonna have a new person on the board. You need to get that settled and then figure out what you wanna do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, we could go down so many different workables here tonight, and we'd be here till midnight, and
Right.
that's not my intention.
Really? Okay, I can second
it-
that intention.
Well, thank you very much. Very helpful. You know, we obviously have not only the raw data, but your discussion points here, some of which you've just gone over as with a broader brush.
Mhm.
So,
In terms of planning ahead, would it make sense to do a check-in at one of our meetings in July, just if? Cause I think the planning board wants, if there are going to be marching orders, in
I would say August.
even better.
That makes sense.
yeah, I think, you know, because,
I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff going on,
Yes.
across the hallway and new
Right.
person on the select board, so there's gonna be a lot of.
yeah, yep, it's a lot of pieces in motion.
There are a number of chat comments in the chat. I don't think we need to go over them right now, but we don't want to lose them. Just for Tyler's info.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
It gets saved in the Zoom recording.
There's a
saved
little
chat.
log.
Mhm. So that whole chat gets saved for him, so that's
Okay.
good.
Good.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
The entire planning board. is
Yeah, we've got a few more members, so
Terry
thanks.
Terry Taylor and Pam Gunnell,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Bob Olich.
Yeah.
And Phil Mason.
so thank you all.
And with that, there was nothing else left on the agenda for this evening. And more comments that anyways, I did want to give members of the board a chance if they wanted to offer any wonderful thoughts to John as he moves on to next pastures and opportunities. And I didn't want it on the agenda because I didn't want John to be able to
No.
plan ahead and duck out.
Yes,
Well,
can
I
just say
certainly
to-
think John is not going anywhere. I'm pretty sure of that. And so he can expect that we will be contacting him when we have questions that he might know the answer to. It's been great, Jonathan, having you here. I remember way back to the comprehensive plan meetings.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot at those meetings about needing people on various boards who were from town, who grew up here, who knew everybody. And you stepped up, and I know it was an easy thing for you to do, but I think we all really appreciate it.
Thanks.
yeah, and I certainly learned a lot from you, John. You know, you're a busy man and, you just, I've watched you step up, especially this last year, and I've appreciated your leadership, in your quiet, knowledgeable and confident way. It serves you well and it has served the town well. So thank you. We're gonna take you out to dinner. No, tonight.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
It's- Yeah, it's just, yeah,
And your parents must be proud because your dad served on the select
Mhm.
board, yeah.
yeah,
So,
I'm just looking forward to hopefully doing the road commissioner, because it's gonna be a lot more my, what I'm used to doing.
yeah,
rather than-
your comfort zone more
Yeah,
so, yeah.
exactly. So-
We all have
Yeah.
our comfort zones, yeah.
So, nope, that's what I'm looking forward to, hopefully.
All right.
Thank you, John, and for the last 2 years, it's been great working with you as chair. And I hope whoever fills that role in the future is as quick and eager to pick up the phone. I know last week there was a day I talked to you 5 times.
Oh, gosh.
And so, you know, just
Yeah.
thank you. And I turn it back over to you for public comment and
Is there any public comment,
Yes,
Bob?
there have been several discussions tonight concerning the roads. At the north end of 127,
Mm-hmm.
there's a tree that's been hanging over the road for the last couple of 3 years, and it's dead. I was going into town this morning, and I noticed it had snapped off
Yes,
sometime during the last couple of 3 days.
I saw that.
It was a big chunk of wood. I don't know who got it off the road. The fire department, to the best of my knowledge, has not called out.
I didn't know anything about it until I saw it off to the side.
But that's, I'm very happy that nobody got hurt because it could have come down when somebody was driving underneath it. And B, that somebody cleared it off the road. I don't know who, I don't know how. There's
Paul
some-
Bunyan.
Some big chunks. There is still a segment there that's about probably 8 or 10 feet tall. And you can see where it snapped and it was rotted and,
Mhm.
something ought to be done with what remains. But a little ways before that, about a year, possibly 2 years ago now, the state came in and replaced a culvert across the entire road.
Well, that was last year.
Okay,
Yeah.
last
Last
year.
year, yes.
And I'm sure, as everybody knows, when you go where they replaced that culvert, because it's sunk about 2 inches or more. Can we do anything to get the state to come and patch that damn thing?
Keep calling them and reminding them. I mean, that's a
I mean,
weekly, it's a
there was
weekly.
just a thing on the local news tonight about the condition of the roads and how it's increasing everybody's car repair
Oh,
bill.
I saw that. That's a prime example right there.
Yeah.
Nobody did anything with the tree. Can we do something with this doggone trench?
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of it, because when I go by it, jerks the truck a little bit to the side, the way it hits it,
Yes, I
so.
know. Anyhow, thank you.
We will add that to our list of frequent mentions to our contact in Edgecombe.
Looks like Susie had her hand up.
I did.
Oh.
I just wanted to say thank you, John, for your service as a selectman and as the chair. And I'm with you. I'm hoping for that next place for you. Um, and I did put these things in the chat, but I wanted to say that our board at the Georgetown Attainable Housing Initiative is so grateful for the planning board to do this survey and to have this kind of data back. And I think it would be a great discussion to have in a bigger way with people from town, with the people who responded and even the people who didn't. And one of the things we didn't discuss tonight is the fact that one of our points was that if people from away can buy a small house that they can fix up with the intent of renting it as a short-term rental, then we may be losing housing to people who want to stay and work here and develop our economy as an island community. So I think that needs to be part of this conversation. And I really appreciate the planning board doing all the work that they did, and I look forward to more conversations about it. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susie.
Any other comment? I don't see any.
Move to adjourn. John's last meeting.
Second,
And that's
All right.
7:01.
Great.
have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
All
Thank
right,
you,
you
everyone.
too. Go vote if you haven't already.